Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Zach Metkler.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Brian Roach, the host who doesn't like toast, but loves training camp, even though I haven't had a chance to get out there yet this year. Hopefully, before it's over, I will be able to enjoy the lovely, lovely atmosphere of Latrobe, PA. But in the meantime, it is always a pleasure to bring back someone who is going to sit in for my brother from another mother, Joseph Kuzma. And I think we should just start calling him Joseph from now on. I don't know why, but we'll be very formal with him. I don't have a good reason for that, other than it'll annoy him. And so sitting in while Joe is, Joseph is out and about and doing some other stuff, getting ready for Friday Night Lights and all those kind of things. The professor of football has returned. The man with the plan, the guy on the scene at training camp with all those great tweets and insight, Zach Metkler. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm trying to cool down a little bit. It was a hot one out there today, but we're making it work.
Yes, I heard you were sweating your ass off.
That was a direct quote. You're right.
I enjoyed tweeting that out. News from training camp. Zach is sweating his ass off.
It wasn't even the worst one. Some people walked by me looking like they just hopped out of the shower, so it was definitely a sight to be seen by all the fans there.
Coach Tomlin in his presser said that it was great weather, great for their conditioning, which is probably true, but it did not make me feel like I was missing out on much sitting in my air-conditioned office.
You certainly were not. But I was surprised. He was wearing a white dry fit, a short sleeve, which was kind of surprising because normally he goes with the whole solidarity thing and he's decked out in black sweatpants and black long sleeve shirts and a black hat. But today he broke out the white, so he must have been feeling the heat a little bit more than usual. Yeah,
well, I watched his post-game presser, and I was actually going to mention this and ask you about this. He actually looks like he's in pretty good shape. He looks like he might have lost some weight. Yeah,
he looks like he's trimmed down a little bit. Not that he was ever a big guy, compared to other coaches, but like he looks like he's trimmed up a little bit. So,
right? No, he's not. He's no Andy Reid, but he was a fuller man. Let's just say that than he appears to be now. And good job for Coach. Good for him.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just life at camp. Who knows? So, speaking of life at camp, you and Joe on the last edition talked about a lot of stuff. We may revisit some of that, but there's some stuff that you may or may not have, heard about that came out after practice ended. First of all, Ryan Switzer was dinged up, went off the field with a quad injury of some kind. He's being evaluated. Of course, we will have no information on any of these guys other than they're being evaluated. Derwin Gray left with what the coach called fatigue-like issues, which might just mean, hey, it was hot, I'm big and tired. But, that it's better to be safe than sorry. Heat stroke's a real thing, and it's not fun. Herb Waters has a shoulder, and you noted Anthony Chickolo was not a participant today, and a lot of people thought that might be a Veterans Day off. Coach says he was being evaluated, not telling anybody what for, but that he was actually being evaluated for some kind of an injury. So, in similar news, there was a DB who some articles came out about, and I don't know what you know about him. I know very little, but I know in the back rooms there was some talk, and you said that the Steelers really liked this guy. He ended up getting released for a non-disclosed illness of some kind, and the Steelers picked up a new wide receiver off of waivers. Since you are the professor of football, what are your insights on any of this?
I was surprised by that. I'm not particularly sure what's going on with Myers, but I know the Steelers have been quietly liking him. I think it was a long shot for him to make the roster realistically, but as a special team contributor or a practice squad guy, who might be called in a pinch. I know they liked him. I don't know what type of illness would cause the team to abruptly waive him. I don't know if there's going to be a re-sign to the IR or a waiver or anything like that happens with him. But it was kind of abrupt news with him. He hadn't stood out tremendously in camp or anything like that. But he definitely wasn't a liability. So I'll be interested to see if anything ever comes of it, or if it kind of is one of those under the table radar moves that happens, and people end up forgetting about it in about a week.
Okay, and do you know anything about the guy they signed? My assumption at this point is it's a guy to catch passes during camp, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's a camp body. I mean, you look at the Steelers' depth chart, you have 8 receivers, and realistically, 6 of them. I'm sorry, you have 9 receivers on the roster currently, and 6 of them have a really strong chance of making the roster. It's just an extra body to get some people in there and to give some other guys breaks if they need to. I mean, Brandon Riley's been he's not young. He's 25. He's young enough. He's been in the league a year or two. I think he's a camp body. I mean, I know he got some time with the Bills before. He had some time with the Lions.
Yeah.
He's a bigger guy. It'll be interesting to see if he ever becomes anything, but I think he's just a camp body at this point.
All right. I want to talk about the receivers a little bit because it's a noted group and is getting a lot of attention. I know Dante Moncrief did not participate today. I know he hurt his finger. I think it was 2 days ago when the last practice.
Yeah, Monday.
But prior to that, there had been a lot of talk about the connection between he and Ben, and that they had some chemistry brewing already. Now, you've been to several of the practices, up until the point when he got a little dinged, which I don't think anybody thinks this is a long-term serious issue. But would you describe that as an accurate statement? They already look comfortable with each other?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, once the actual colors start changing on the other side of the field and you go against other players, I think realistically you're going to see some hiccups, but I think the chemistry and the quote-unquote Wi-Fi that we've seen from Ben with other receivers before definitely wasn't overblown. I think some people thought that was more of a hyperbole thought that, he has this chemistry already without doing anything. But I mean, he seems to be naturally fitting in where Ben wants him to, sinking into coverage the right way. Ben rolls out, he naturally flows out with him. He's showing a lot of vet savvy and a lot of cohesion with Ben that you don't really see from guys they've brought in the past, like Justin Hunter and DHB. I think this is kind of the free agent signing that they were hoping to get from Justin Hunter when they brought him on. Just more of a higher pedigree player. But he fits that role of an X very well. He's been playing a lot on the single receiver side. He's beating cornerbacks off the ball. He has good release. He has good deep speed. He's catching virtually everything that Ben throws at him. I think he will have a nice role in here. I think at this point in time, before we start seeing the live action, like I said, I would put him above James Washington. I would say he's pretty clearly at this point made himself the number 2 receiver so far through camp. And I think that's going to be a role that the Steelers could really use now that they're going to have all these targets to try to move around with the departure of AB.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ben really likes to have somebody he trusts and is comfortable with. And, of course, all quarterbacks do. What caught my attention was where Ben was talking about how Moncrief is already picking up on less subtle cues from him, be it a hand signal, be it just a look, be it maybe an eye movement. They seem to be tuned in, and I think that's very encouraging. And as you said, and I am not one to get overhyped until we start actually having preseason games, and I don't think you are either, unlike someone else that we know. But and I'll give him a shout out later. I'm not giving him a shout out yet, but I'll give him a shout out later. But so I take all this with a grain of salt, but nonetheless, it's an encouraging sign because it is absolutely not something we saw with some of these other receivers who came in, during the past 8 or 10 years. And it is something that he definitely had with Antonio Brown, Mr. Big Chest, who I'm not supposed to say his name, but I did already. So, over the course of their time together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think his ability to come in there, you can kind of see that. Like there's times where, the defense throws out zone and you see him naturally sit down into the gap in the zone coverage, and then Ben rolls out and you can tell him, you see Ben kind of shift his head, he comes flying over, and Moncrief comes flying out, gets a nice gain, and it's still in an open space, and turns upfield and runs with it. And like I said, like you said, and the guys they brought in the past at receiver have not nearly blended as well with Ben as they have as Moncrief has. And I think realistically, that's going to be a thing that pays off well once the games start. I'm the same way as you. It's exciting to see these guys perform, but I do know in the back of my mind that they might look good now, and then first preseason game rolls around and they look lost. I have a gut feeling that watching Moncrief so far this camp, I don't think he's going to falter when the preseason and regular season starts. I mean, I think we've seen enough from him during his time with the Colts and with the Jaguars that he has the potential to be a playmaking receiver who's just been plagued by poor quarterback play and inconsistent quarterback play outside of his short time with Andrew Luck. So I think seeing what he's done so far in camp, the quick relationship he's formed with not even Ben Roethlisberger, but just the offense in general and the other receivers, I think is going to be something that's going to pay massive dividends for them as they move forward in 2019.
All right. And, I want to touch on Switzer and Eli Rogers real quickly, because with Switzer getting hurt, if he misses, we say this all the time, availability is the best I don't remember what the word is now.
Availability is the best ability, or the best ability.
Best ability is availability. Yes, thank you. That's what we say. And so if Switzer misses any length of time, that opens up things for maybe a Deontay Spencer or Eli Rogers. I know that you are probably under the impression, or at least from reading some of what you've had out there, you seem to be under the impression they're likely to keep 6. If it's if they're being forced to make a choice between Switzer and Rogers, they'll probably just keep them. Is that how you still feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think even with Switzer being banged up now with his quad, I know some fans aren't huge supporters of Switzer, but I mean, he's had a nice camp. I mean, he's a very natural route runner. He's caught a lot of things Ben has. You can tell he's more comfortable this year, being that he's had a full offseason to work with Ben and the other receivers compared to being thrown into it the last second in 2018. I think he's done enough to keep the spot. And I just think his role on special teams, I mean, beyond Deontay Johnson, the two of them are the only two guys that I think have made a clear impression so far that they're going to be worth anything as kick returners. I mean, Deontay Spencer's done well in that capacity as well, but I just think he's on the outside looking in. But he has had moments. I mean, Deontay Spencer's gotten some work. He got some work today with some of the first group guys. He had Ben throwing the ball. He's getting a lot of second team reps. And he's doing, I think he's a very pure route runner. I think he's one of the better route runners on the team. And for a guy his size, he plays much bigger than he is. And he has the deep speed and deep threat ability. I just think the Steelers are likely to keep 6, not because of a lack of need elsewhere. I think there's a chance they keep 5, but I think you have 6 guys that are very clearly at this point above the rest, with Deontay Spencer very much closing in on that. Because I think Stephen Jones and Trey Griffey aren't bad either. I just think they aren't at that level yet to be 53-man roster guys. But I think everyone else that's been up there from that point of view regarding Rodgers and Switzer, I think both provide enough to the team to keep them. I think Rodgers at this point has kind of established himself as the first true slot, which is kind of tough to say because I think JuJu's going to play a lot in the slot. But I think Rodgers has that rapport with Ben. Ben is throwing him the ball a lot during practices. He's catching a lot. He's looking very good on his routes. His release looks a lot much better this year because he's healthy. I think that's a big thing fans forget too, is that he hasn't been healthy recently. And I think him having a full offseason of health, being able to get back into the groove of things for the quarterback that, loves playing with him, I think he has a really good shot of being an early contributor over Switzer. I think at this point, if I had to pick a guy that's probably going to be on the outside looking in from those top 6, it probably would be Switzer. But I just, in my mind, think that they're going to keep 6, and Switzer will be the 6th guy on the roster.
Gotcha. Now, there's another thing I want to talk about because it's indicative of how Ben makes receivers look better. There was a play that you posted a video of, James Washington, basically, if you're just watching it, it looks like he puts a move on Joe Hayden, blows past him, Hayden bites, and Washington's gone for a big gain. But I think from looking at the video, and I think you might have said this, but I can't remember, I think that part of that is he bit on Ben, and Ben helped head fake him off. Now, do you remember the play I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
What did you see there? And the reason I'm getting into this is I think, with somebody like James Washington, second-year guy, who, was one of those guys who showed out big time in camp last year, looked fantastic, and then kind of faded away until towards the end of the season when he started to get his feet under him again. Not necessarily unusual for a rookie, but, that's... I wonder how much of that is now familiarity. Ben knows, the kind of things that James is going to do and can help him to be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's first of all, I want to backtrack on this entire play. I think my Twitter has been criticizing heavily Joe Hayden for that play, and I'm going to stop that right now because Joe Hayden's had an excellent camp. He's had an excellent 2 years with the Steelers. Let's stop acting like he's a bum of a player, which I hate that term, but let's stop pretending like he's going to be a liability. It was one bad play in practice on, like he's probably likely trying stuff out. And to be fair, that was a chair route. For those of you that don't know, you sell the out and you make it turn it up and avert. So like you go and you make it look like you're selling the out. Like you said, Ben did an excellent job at head faking that, bumping that out to get that. And we realistically think that's going to be an out route because the Steelers have traditionally ran out routes religiously with their outside receivers. You see A, B, and G make those plays all the time. Hayden's been on it, and that's just a case of knowing what you have with your opposing offense. And then James Washington just turns it up and makes a great read. And if fans remember back to the Bengals game, Week 17 last year, that's one thing that Washington did well. That was the big game towards the end of the game that kind of gave the Steelers momentum to steal that one away against Cincinnati. And that's been his bread and butter. He did well with that in Oklahoma State. He's doing well with it with the Steelers. So I think it was overall just a great on the offense. There wasn't the help over top. Ben took advantage of that. Ben also has had one of the better pump fakes in the NFL over the course of his career. So I think blaming that on the defense, saying that the defense was abysmal and that they're picking up in midseason form and however you want to phrase it to make them seem like they're playing atrociously. The secondary has had a lot of good practices. There was one play in a vacuum. You can't base the entire training camp and season off that one play.
Well, to be fair, that Twitterdom is going to do that. Anytime there's one bad anything, it immediately becomes the storyline, and everything is.
I mean, like the play I uploaded earlier of JuJu and Artie Burns going up there. JuJu's getting criticized because of his release on there because it wasn't the best release, but yet he's been absolutely embarrassed multiple DBs early on during the one-on-one sessions. With his release, get off and route running, so he has one bad play, gets exploited, and that's it, because we like to over-sensationalize things. But I digress.
No, because it brings me around to the other point I wanted to make, which was this, that, in a lot of cases, I was going to circle back around. You beat me to it, damn you. That's why you're the professor of football. I wanted to circle back around and say, look, while there is a point to say, Ben can help out his receivers, it helps out a lot of things. It gets them to look and feel better overall. At the same time, it's one play, and you cannot look. Any DB. Ben can make any DB look bad. With the right setup, and when you have that combination. So it's not Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden has had a solid camp, if not an excellent camp, and I think based on what I'm hearing out of camp. Not just from the SCU guys, so that I'm not just saying, okay, but even from national guys, from other sites, the DBs are ball hawking their brains out. They are on top of guys. They are pumped. They are fired up. They're playing really well. it doesn't mean they're not going to have a mistake or two. That's why we have practice, so that you get those out of your system. You start to learn things. And you know, Joe Hayden's an all-pro level cornerback who is still a human being, going to make some mistakes. JuJu is a second-year player, I guess third-year player now. I can't count. A third-year player who is on the cusp of becoming the next big thing from Steelers wide receivers. I'm not saying for sure that's what he's going to do, but you know, you hear the things like, I think Michael Irvin did an interview with Sutton Smith talking about how he begged Jerry Jones to draft JuJu because he saw something in this kid. I think we've all seen something in this kid, and it gets a little bit overlooked or minimalized because he's a kid, and sometimes he acts like a kid. A lot of times he acts like a kid. But at the same time, there was a great deal of maturity shown when he just, you know, side-doored coming in and you know, avoided any excess drama at the beginning of camp. I think you make an excellent point that, you know, you can pick apart anybody and go and find the one play where they look bad and then latch onto it and decide they're a bum. But that's an inaccurate way to look at reality, you know. And the reality is that JuJu looks really good. The DBs look better. Well, I'm not going to leap out on a limb and say they look really good. They look better. And, you know, one mistake here or there isn't going to, you know, end the world. And they're going up against a Hall of Fame level quarterback who's got solid receivers that, you know, and it's practice. They're going to probably look really good at times. So I think that wraps that up. But I mean, you got anything else you want to add to that little bit?
Yeah, no, I was just going to throw in there, you know, my time with player evaluation and coaching and whatnot, it's a lot easier to sit there and pick apart their negatives. But I mean, what's going to give you the full picture is what their positives are. What are they good at doing? How can we make them succeed? And if you want to sit there and spend all your time, you know, nitpicking the negative plays, you know, that's fine. That's just a waste of time. I mean, it's good to know the negatives and what you need to improve upon, but the positives are going to stand out. I mean, you know, no one's going to remember, you know, one little bad play in practice, but they're going to remember when you're catching a game-winning touchdown pass. So, you know, that's my 2 cents on not dwelling on the negatives.
Yeah. So I want to move to the linebackers, specifically the inside linebackers. And I don't know how much you got to watch them today, but there was some noise that Vince Williams actually balled out a lot today, and looked really solid. And I know that they've been playing them. You know, Devin Bush has gotten a lot of work with the ones. Barron's been in and out. But I know that whenever they've been in I think dime, it's been Bush out there. What are you seeing from not just Bush and Barron, but the group of inside linebackers that is encouraging? And is there anything that's concerning to you?
Right now, I can't say there's anything concerning, particularly with the top three with Williams, Barron, and Bush. I think, you know, they have three guys that are going to be able to be utilized better than they were last year. You know, a big complaint with the Steelers in 2018 and post Ryan Shazier in 2017 was the lack of athleticism there. And while I don't believe you need to have a Ryan Shazier caliber athlete at linebacker, it certainly doesn't help, or it certainly doesn't hurt, to have that guy that can make those plays for you. I mean, right now, just based on looking at it, I mean, Mark Barron, I'm convinced, is going to kill multiple people during this season. I mean, every play, even if he's going and like they blow the whistle dead, he's still laying a thump on guys. He's not knocking them down, but he's making sure you know he's there. And there was the play on Monday against Christian Scotland Williamson where he came out of nowhere. I mean, he's a 6'9", 260-pound dude, laid him down like a bowling ball. You know, it was absolutely frightening to see. And, you know, that's what Mark Barron was known for coming out of Alabama. It's what he's done well so far in the league. I think he has the potential as a dime backer and rotational piece. He's going to lay some people out. But, you know, Devin Bush is doing a really great job making splash plays. You know, you can see the football intelligence that he possesses that a lot of guys don't necessarily have as rookies, and why the team has been raving about his ability to pick things up, because he's coming down, he's reading the plays very well. he doesn't seem like he's lost whatsoever out there. I mean, there's been some rookie moments like that you're going to have with anybody, but more often than not, he's diagnosing the running back out of the field. He's picking up receivers entering his zone whenever they're running zone coverage, and I think that's stuff that you don't necessarily always see from a rookie, and I think that's going to bode really well for him. And he's an athlete. I mean, his lane fills right now during run support. He's coming downhill in a hurry, making the right choice. It's the same stuff we saw from him in Michigan. I mean, he's picking up right where you would expect him to pick up. And I think as long as he can stay healthy this year, he's going to be a very much, and this is a really bold statement I'm not used to making, but I think he's going to be a guy you're going to see in consideration for defensive rookie of the year if he plays the way that we're expecting him to. I mean, he's doing everything right now that he needs to. And Vince Williams is just picking up the energy. I mean, he seems like he's a lot more focused. He seems like he's coming down, doing what he needs to do. I think when you have two athletes back in the linebacker group like you have with Barron and Bush, that's going to allow Williams to do what he does best, and that's support underneath, blitz the quarterback, because I think he's been one of the more efficient blitzing inside linebackers the Steelers have had in quite a while. And if you remember before Ryan Shazier got hurt, he had, 5, 6 sacks or something like that?
Yep.
I think that's a stat line that's going to be very easily attainable for him because you're not going to need him to drop back in coverage nearly as much. And when they're doing their dime packages, Williams isn't on the field like he had to be at times last year. You have Barron or Bush out there, which allows you to keep the athletes on the field without a liability of any athleticism. So I'm excited with this linebacker group. I haven't had a huge amount of time to watch them when they're on the opposite side of the field, but when they come over and team, they're setting the tone, they're coming down, they're filling the run lanes, they're dropping back into coverage and looking much more fluid than they did. And I think this year, that group with Williams, Barron, and Bush is going to be much more effective than last year with Williams, Bostic, and Fort. I think it's going to be a much better looking group this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do have one favor to ask. Please refer to that place where he went to school as the school up north. I don't like hearing that name. It bothers me. My Buckeye roots are showing through, and I mean, obviously, I think you point out a lot of good stuff. I know that's the vibe. Really feels like that. Bush gets it, and even though everybody is hesitant to anoint him, just as you said, as a guy who is obviously going to be a key element, you start to get that feel. In the clips, when you can watch him in the clips, you'll have a better shot at looking at him. Obviously, at camp, we will all have a better shot watching when the first preseason game rolls around. But the fact that he's ingrained into the defense, he's able to call the plays, he's making the right decisions. Tunch Ilkin did a report on the linebackers, and he said, his instincts are such that he makes guesses, but they're always right because they're well-informed guesses.
Yep.
That they're really excited. I think we all should have reason to feel good about that. So the other thing that happened today, because Chickalo was not playing, was something that we all wondered when and if it was going to happen and how it would happen. In other words, how it would flower, so to speak, or bloom. And that's Ola, the new 92, playing with the ones.
Yeah.
Out there. Obviously, I didn't hear a lot of stuff. Like, I didn't hear a lot of chatter about how he was still unblockable and couldn't be stopped. But, when he's out there with the ones, how did he look when he got bumped up to varsity?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't make any massive splash plays with the number ones, but the technique was all there and the opportunity was there. During the team sessions, they went a lot more run heavy, especially with the ones. You saw a lot more action from Samuels and Snell and Connor and whatnot during those upper team sessions. But he still is effective. His bull rush is great due to his leverage. I mean, his ripping, his pad level to dip underneath is incredible. It's very reminiscent of a young James Harrison, just less bulky and meatheadish. But he has the technique down. I think he's going to be a guy that when the actual action starts and he gets some reps with the ones or early twos mixed with the ones during preseason games, I think he's going to flash. I think he is providing a good place to see what you have with him, especially with Bud Dupree's contract situation looming after this season. During one-on-ones, I didn't get a chance to see some of them, but I've seen some clips pop up on there. He's still embarrassing guys when it comes to his push-pull-rip, when it comes to his ability to dip around and even just get up and bull rush underneath the pads. I mean, he's a quick guy. He looks stronger. He looks bigger this year than he did last season, which I thought was nice to see because he's not the biggest guy. I think a lot of his ability to get on the field and on a more consistent basis is going to come down to his ability in coverage. I think when it's all said and done, there's enough intangibles to work with that you're going to want to get him on the field, potentially some more mixed in there with the starters over Chickalo, because I think you have with Chick at this point.
Right.
But I think Ola did all right. It wasn't like a standout day with the ones, but I think that was less because of him and more because of the fact that they are rotating a bunch of guys in and out there. Like I said earlier on Twitter, Sutton Smith got some looks with the ones. You saw some Tazar skipper out there with them. So I think they're just moving guys around now, giving Bud some rest, and with Watt and Chick out still, seeing what they have. But it wasn't a bad day by any means. Run support, he was strong. He was filling lanes like he needed to. He was containing well. I think with him, the preseason games are going to be the biggest judgment on what type of role he's going to have with the Steelers this year.
All right. The other, you mentioned Sutton Smith, and the other interesting thing is he at least, if not the entire practice, at least part of it, had on a white jersey and was working with the backs. How much did you see of that? What did that look like? Did he mix in on the defense, or was he really like this is his offensive day?
He mixed in with the offense during the first team period, it was the first team period. He had a white 42 on, but from what I could tell, the rest of the afternoon he was predominantly with the defense. I know he took some drills with the offense earlier as well, like he did during OTAs and minicamp, but it was predominantly a defensive day because of how much work he was getting on that side of the ball. They had him outside. He bumped in a couple plays, but it was a predominantly defensive day for him. And he looked all right. It wasn't anything to write home about, but it wasn't a bad day either.
No, I mean, you've said this, and I know we said this early on for these guys who are like he and Ulysses Gilbert. Their path to the roster is through special teams, and that's their way to get and become a part of the team. It doesn't mean that down the road they can't become defensive participants, but the way that they're going to get there is the same way James Harrison made his bones early on, getting on special teams and making your presence felt there. There's a topic I want to talk about that's coming off an interview Vance McDonald did, but before we get to it, I want to we've now had couple padded practices. We're getting into kind of the heart of camp. We're getting ready for, Friday Night Lights at the end of the week, and then a preseason game coming up, next week? And, what do you feel like you're seeing being out there and getting an overall impression of the team?
This team, you hear all the fake, people talking about camaraderie and whatnot. There's, the media talking about how the players saying how this feels like more like a team than it has in recent years. But I don't think that's fake. I mean, you see the guys on the field, they're talking, they're chirping at each other. The energy level seems to be up. Like today there was a play I've never seen in the years I've been going to camp. I've never seen this where Ben faked this sneak, flipped it on the outside, and then ran 90 yards with a touchdown. Obviously uncontested with JuJu. Tossed it, him and JuJu are high-fiving each other down the other end. Every single time a running back goes and runs to the end zone, Rosie Nix is running right next to him, getting the extra work in there. You see position groups mingling that you haven't seen before in years past on both sides of the ball. This feels like a team that is more together as a family and a unit than they were in years past, and I think that's going to be huge for them because I think you hear that stuff on the media, and that stuff makes for great sound bites on ESPN and NFL Network and whatnot. But when you see it actually happening, you see the communication amongst all levels of the team being improved. I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team. The defense today was bringing the heat. I mean, they were coming down with intensity and fire. I mean, you heard about the fight with Cam Hayward and Alejandro Villanueva. I mean, two guys you would never expect to be fighting during practice, but that's the intensity and the passion they're bringing every day in camp. I think there's a lot to be excited about. It's hard to tell without any games happening. So I think once we see the preseason action start next week, we'll get a better feel for it. But, I think people are sleeping on the Steelers more this year than they probably should be. And I might end up regretting that statement a couple months from now, but I really don't think that's the case. This feels like the whole addition by subtraction thing and the whole adversity they faced last year and this offseason, I think, is going to be something that was the wake-up call they needed to band together, refocus, re-philosophize their team heading into the year. And I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes from this year.
Yeah, and that brings me into this, what I want to talk about. Vance McDonald did an interview on The Fan, and in it, he talks about Ben, and he says, look, I haven't been here that long, but, I got to go through a full camp that last year, but it's just different this year, and he's different, and that he really expects Ben, who has said to everybody there, that I'm going to have the best year I've ever had. He believes that that's the case. He believes Ben's going to play the best ball he's played in his career this year. And he thinks that a lot – and you talked about family, and in that Irving interview I was talking about, he also talks about family. And you've coached teams or are coaching teams. You've played on teams. I've played on teams, football at various levels, college and high school and earlier. And there is a lot of truth to when – it's always these are your guys and you got their back. But there is a difference when it is a dysfunctional group of guys and a dysfunctional family as opposed to when it is a family. If you can remember back to the last time the Steelers won a Super Bowl and the whole Band of Brothers concept that existed for them, that was the type of feeling that is different. It's when a group of guys is able to elevate themselves above what they are normally capable of, simply because everybody is helping everybody. Everybody is helping everybody to be better. They're supporting everybody. They're keeping everybody up. They're keeping the energy right. And that's the feel that I get from hearing people talk, from hearing the athletes talk, from hearing the beat writers talk about what's going on in this camp. And you mentioned the point of, don't underplay that whole addition by subtraction thing and how chemistry is important and how camaraderie is important. And I think that all ties into this concept of family, where you've got guys who just want to be around each other. They want to do the best they can for each other. They're playing for each other. They're not playing for themselves. I'm not going to mention who might have been doing that, but they are. It's a team, and I've said this ever since the beginning of the nightmare of '84, where he was demanding to be gone and quit on the team, the Bengals game, and all of that. I said there comes a point in time where you can lose high talented individuals and be a better team. And this really feels to me like that is the direction this is heading. Again, nobody knows anything. And we could see the first preseason game and go, my God, what a mess. I doubt that that's what we'll see. And, truth is, even if we do see it, it's the first preseason game. But we could come out of the preseason feeling, wow, this is really not going in the direction we thought it was. But I find that unlikely. And yeah, it's touchy-feely, hipster crap, but there's truth to it. You've lived it. I've lived it. We know there's truth to it. And I think that should give Steelers fans a real reason to be hyped about this season and to maybe, I'm not going to say that they can win it all, even though I think they can. But it certainly, in my mind, does not, prepend or kind of indicate that the Steelers are on the downside or are going in the wrong direction. And that that the decisions that were made were probably the right ones. And I think that this could be a really interesting season. And it's funny. It's funny that this is not that I dream about the Steelers every night, but I kind of dream about the Steelers often. And so it was funny that Ola was running with the ones today, because last night I had a dream about the first game, the Patriots game. And in this game, Ola gets to start for some reason. And you've got Ola on one side and you've got TJ on the other side. And they sacked Brady like 7 times. So that would be like, that's not the nightmare. That's the actual dream, the good dream that I hope comes true. So it was weird when I got very excited when he was running with the ones today, and just very interesting. So that kind of brings me to what I think during camp anyway, and we'll see if Joe wants to join in on this, a new segment for us to kind of round things out, because, camp is interesting. The people there are interesting, and it's not just the players who are interesting; it's the people that are around that are interesting. You could see an Amish guy with a telephoto lens. You could see a variety of different things. But I'm going to call this segment "Things Overheard at Camp." And so I know you tweeted some of these out, and that kind of inspired me. And I know you and Joe had heard some things. I would like you to tell me today, what was the thing you overheard at camp that made you stop and go, huh?
Well, the first one, which I'll come back to, was about Dante Moncrief. I tweeted this out for those of you that don't follow me. But the one that kind of stood out to me the most, which I guess there's a couple ways you can look at this, was during a play in which Josh Dobbs was in the quarterback and Jalen Samuels was the running back. Samuels took the fake, stood for a second protection, and ran out to the flat. And Dobbs was rushed to make a bad throw. Threw behind Samuels, who ultimately, because he had to make a really difficult adjustment on the ball, didn't catch the pass. Not to be surprised, not many running backs could have made the catch. To which overheard a fan within earshot of me begin to complain about the quote-unquote massive contract that meaning the Steelers, had just signed Jalen Samuels to. Well, he didn't name him Jalen Samuels. He just said the big contract we signed him to. So I don't even know if he knew it was Jalen Samuels. And we signed him that money, and he's going to not even be able to catch easy passes like that. This is ridiculous. What a waste of money. Meanwhile, Jalen Samuels, as most of you know, was a 5th-round draft pick in 2018, who currently, as of 2019, is going to count as $634,000 against the salary cap, which is next to nothing in terms of today's NFL. Which, to some folks, and this is the optimist in me wants to believe that this individual thought that $634,000 was a lot of money, which to the average person it is, but in the NFL world that's pennies. Not sure who he was confusing Samuels for. Not sure in what world he thought the drop that Samuels had was an easy pass, because it was not. And even the likes of Le'Veon Bell would blush if he would have caught it. And it was very off-putting. Secondly, another favorite story that I heard today, 2 individuals arguing over who number 11 was, who was not in pads today. Those of you that know, Dante Moncrief injured his hand, on Monday's practice. Did not practice today, but went through some walkthrough stuff that he can manage. But he had his jersey on, he had a hoodie on, and shorts. They were arguing about who number 11 was. I did not get able to catch the names they were throwing around. But they also then began arguing about which player on the field was currently Dante Moncrief. And little did they know that they are the same person. Dante Moncrief is number 11. Dante Moncrief was not practicing today because of an injury. And, it was very concerning, especially whenever you consider the fact that Dante Moncrief is one of the tallest receivers currently on the roster. And when the season starts and everyone makes the roster that I expect will make the roster, he will be the tallest receiver. It was kind of odd not catch this tall, long, lanky guy on there. And, the advent of the internet and the advent of the fact that they hand out rosters at camp would pretty much give you the quick glimpse that maybe I should just probably look up who number 11 is, or, reverse search Dante Moncrief's name on the roster. But, maybe I'm giving people too much credit. Who knows? But two things that stood out to me today during camp. And, there's always the arguments you hear of individuals arguing over which depth lineman is who, arguing over what roles players will have that they've never had before. And all of a sudden these fans think it'd be a good idea to throw guys like Vance McDonald at running back, and they're not just being facetious about it, they're being 100% real with it. And I'm not talking about just lining him up in the backfield out of a split shotgun look. I'm talking about straight up having him line up in eye behind James Conner, or behind Ben and Rosie Nix, things like that. Those are even more realistic than complaining about a guy on a former fifth round draft pick on the second year of his rookie contract. But, it keeps me entertained, especially in the hot weather in Latrobe. It allows me to, during special teams periods and whatnot, listen into conversations going on around me and put a nice little smile on my face of some of the fans that attend camp.
Yeah, we have, Bob Labriola does his Ask and Answered column, and he's notorious for mocking people who want to have the change of positions, and you wonder where those questions come from. There you go.
Big 6'5", 250-pound tight end who, in theory, if you're playing high school football, would be great to be at your running back. But I mean, I like Vance McDonald at tight end. I don't know about the rest of Steelers Nation, but that's where I like him. So
yeah. Please don't move him from tight end, because that means Xavier Grimble is our starter, and that's not what I want to hear. So
that probably means also that James Conner, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, and maybe even Ralph Webb and Trey Edmonds and Malik Williams, and you insert a name here, have also fallen off the face of the earth, and the Steelers have no running backs on the roster.
Yes, so if that happens, forget all the camaraderie stuff. We're doomed. We're just doomed. So is that now? That was today, and I know you've heard other things over a period of time. Is that the one? Are those still the ones that you find to be, because they're most current? Are they the most egregious, or is there one from back in time that you find to be, since this is the first time we've talked about it, one that you still carry with you and you just cannot believe?
From last year's camp, and I still joke about this with Joseph. One day we were together at practice last training camp, and there was these individuals that sat behind us that were convinced that our rookie quarterback in the third round taken out of Oklahoma State's name was Mason Randolph. And they were dead set on the fact that was his name, and people around them were correcting him saying, "You mean Mason Randolph?" No, Randolph, number 2 out there is a rookie from Oklahoma or something like that, which is fine. I'm not saying you have to know every single thing about it, but when you have a printed out roster in hand and you very clearly see no A or N in Rudolph, maybe again give two people too much credit, but they were convinced his name was Randolph, and that story is very interesting to me because I was 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. I had to look to Mason Randolph, and it was with that Pittsburgh accent. They're putting some heavy linguist on it, where it was just really just uncomfortable to listen to for 2 hours. And I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised, but I still cringe at some of the Pittsburghese. I mean, I have some of my own, but I try to tone it back a little bit. But that was a story that kind of sticks out in my mind from last year. That was kind of very, very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, that's it's. I don't want to, go out and tell everybody that they need to upgrade their smartphones or upgrade their flip phones. But, there is this thing called apps, and Steelers have their own. And, it's got a lot of information in it that you could find out, even if you can't do anything else. And, the cell coverage, I think, is adequate in Latrobe, if not better than adequate. I mean, it is a college, and the students would be losing their minds if they couldn't have cell coverage. So... Well, are there things, as we wrap this episode up, are there things that you want to look for over the next week or so as we head into the first preseason game that people should maybe be aware of?
I would say that right now, one thing I'm going to take in consideration is I think JuJu is going to be on the field a lot, but I also think the receivers that you're going to see lined up next to him are going to be relatively fluid. I don't think it's going to be a situation like we saw last year where JuJu and AB are dominating the snaps. I think you're going to have JuJu kind of dominating the snap count for the most part between like 80 and 85%. I think you're going to see a lot of rotation beside him with guys like Dante Moncrief, James Washington, Deontay Johnson, which, all of them have looked good thus far throughout camp. And I think defense, I'm hoping this translates over there, but I think they have a fire under their butts. I think they know that they were criticized heavily last year with their turnovers. I think they're getting hands-on throws much more frequently this year than they did in camp last year. There's a deflected pass and interception just about every single team session. And it's only a matter of time until those things start clicking. But I think, like I said before, this team's a team that I think has their heads together at this point, and they're trying to come together as a unit. And I think that's going to be something that you see hopefully on the field. And like you said as well, it may not. They may end up being atrocious, and maybe some of these big media heads are correct, and this is going to be a very average to below average Steelers team that gets dominated by the Browns or Ravens. But I think camaraderie and chemistry can't be undersold on the football field, especially when you still have talent. I think when you mix talent with chemistry, good things happen. I mean, that's why the Eagles won a Super Bowl 2 years ago. That's why the Patriots dynasty has been as good as they are, because of elite coaching, great talent at quarterback, and then, just having guys that fit their roles around them that play at a high level. I think if the Steelers can do those things, I mean, they're still the Steelers. I've never seen a team that has the talent they still have on offensive and defensive line, at quarterback, at receiver, at running back, and all of a sudden they go from being a Super Bowl contender to, being projected to finish in third place in the conference. I think it's unheard of. And I think that's good for the Steelers. I think they're taking that on the shoulder, and I think they're carrying that weight into the season. I'm hoping that as we start seeing some of these things here, you're going to start seeing some different wrinkles. I think the Steelers are going to have some new wrinkles. They've thrown some out there in camp with how they're trying to get some different looks out there to get mismatches against the defense, and I think that's going to be very fun to watch. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch, and they're going to be a fun team to cheer for, and hopefully, we have a lot less heartburn during the season this year, watching games go down the last minute all the time. I hopefully we can see some nice, solid victories that will allow us to enjoy our Sundays a little bit more than we have in recent years. So that's going to be a fun year. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully things will continue to shake out as camp continues on over the next 2 weeks.
Yep, I'm thrilled that we've avoided any major injury bugs to this point. Knock on wood. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the amount of animosity or we as Steelers fans tend to think everybody's jealous of us because we're Steelers fans and because, the Steelers are the best. But man, there are some butthurt people out there who cannot wait to have the Steelers fail, and really are almost, I don't quite get it. I don't understand the level of animosity and the level of negativity coming towards this team simply because a couple divas left, and one of them who wasn't even here last year anyway. So we will see how it all boils out. Zach, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for the coverage of camp. You, I assume, plan on returning over the next week or so?
Yes, sir. I'll be there. If any of you, our listeners, are going to be at Friday Night Lights, I will be there, and I'm going to try to be at a couple of practices next week as my my personal football schedule allows it. So hope to see you guys there. If you're in the area, let me know. I'd love to meet up with some of you.
Yeah, I had hoped to try and get out to Friday Night Lights, but my daughter's graduation party is this weekend, and that kind of takes precedence.
What's more important, Brian? The Steelers or your daughter? Come on.
It's my daughter. There's no question, but hopefully by the next week I'll be able to get out to some of the camp towards the end, and that's all that matters anyway. At the end of camp, the beginning of camp, who cares? You guys can cover all that. I'll look at the end of camp. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. Thank again, everybody, for listening. Remember to subscribe, like, get the bell on, as they say, to get notifications of whenever we put something new up. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, at Steel City Underground, or at Cannons Don't Thun, or at GZ Sports _ZM. Is that right? Did I get it right?
Oh, yeah, you got it.
That's freaky, man. That's because I was retweeting you all day. We appreciate it. We look forward to it. Thank God we're actually talking about football. So until next time, he's Zach, I'm Brian, and as I always like to say, it's chaos out there, so be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.